Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the voiceover webinar today. I'm thrilled to be here. Uh, Voiceover is a passion for me. I've been in voiceover for a long, long time, and it is just a great business to be in. And hopefully, you guys will be taking away a lot of great information today about voiceover, so that eventually you can make a decision about your own voiceover career. And of course, I'm a bit prejudiced because I think a voiceover career is definitely worthy, a worthy pursuit and a wonderful sort of extension of the voiceover of the entertainment business. And I do think it's worthy in pursuing. So anyway, we're going to get started. First of all, I would like to just go into a little bit of my background, because I think you probably want to know who the heck is this guy and why is he relevant and what experiences led him to this sort of information. So anyway, I've been in Los Angeles for over 35 years, and I went to Boston University. I was in the communications program there, and when I was there at the university, I worked in radio and worked at the radio station, reading news and writing news, and then I worked at a PR company while I was in Boston, and then I worked at a TV station. So I got a lot of media experience while I was there in Boston, and truth be told, I love that city so much, and I almost stayed there, but then there really wasn't a place for me in the business, in the entertainment business. So I ventured out and ended up going down to New York City. And originally, I was thinking about, maybe working at an ad agency in New York, or, at an entertainment related company doing media. But, there weren't a lot of opportunities in the mid 80s there. There was a slowdown in the industry. I had interviewed at a bunch of ad agencies and a couple of production companies. And even though, I ended up actually through contacts going to CBS and interviewing there, but it just didn't work out. And so I felt that this was a good opportunity for me to move and to relocate or locate to Los Angeles, because I had heard that, of course, there was entertainment there and media and a lot of opportunity. And I thought, why not do it while I was still young? So anyway, I picked up everything and left and went to LA, and through a couple of contacts, I involved myself in extras casting. And so I was working on a bunch of TV shows. I worked on Moonlighting, Cagney and Lacey, Hunter, Wonder Years, 30-something, a lot of films, The Running Man, RoboCop, the list goes on. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was a great opportunity for me to get on sets and to observe people and watch them in action and see what jobs basically I didn't want in the entertainment business. And then our company went out of business after a couple of years, and so I was on my own, and I started temping at a couple of different talent agencies. And after working at William Morris and ICM and Creative Artists, I was placed at an agency called Abrams-Rubaloff Lawrence. And at that time, in the late 80s, they were known as a very big commercial agency, but also they had a vibrant game show department. They had a lot of the main hosts. You'd recognize a lot of them from that era there. And then they also had a huge voiceover department. And so they placed me in the voiceover department and as an assistant. And then after 2 weeks, I had fallen in love. It just really seemed to mesh with my skills. I mean, I had done theater in the past as well. I'd been an actor. Even though I really wasn't that interested in acting, I was fascinated with the craft of stagecraft. But I ended up also stage managing and things. But when I ended up at Abrams-Rubaloff Lawrence, it just seemed to really, all my skill set leading up to that point had meshed. And the equivalent of that was being in a voiceover business. And so I ended up getting hired there full time, and I worked as an assistant for about a year. And then I was very lucky. There was an agent shift, and then I was made a junior agent, then full agent. And then 2 years after that, I was department head. And it was just, as I said, it was love at first sight. I just thought it was a fantastic place. We had a lot of wonderful talent. I was pinching myself because I was in there directing Martin Landau and Leslie Nielsen and Don Knotts and all these wonderful character actors from the 60s and 70s and 80s. And they were listening to my direction, which I found fascinating and kind of shocking. But I learned a lot in that position. I learned how to negotiate for talent. I learned a lot about the advertising industry because voiceover at that time, a lot of it was just advertising based. We didn't have any online at all back then. It was narration, animation, and that was about it, and commercials. So I learned a lot and just loved the creative aspect of directing talent. I also loved negotiating for them, but I stayed there for 5 years running the department. And then I thought, you know what? I really wanted something a bit more creative. I wanted something even more creative than what I was doing. I mean, I loved guiding actors' careers, but I wanted to be the hiring person as opposed to the seller. And so I leapt over to the other side and ended up going to, by fortunate happenstance, I landed at a wonderful comedy commercial production company that was just so hot and vibrant at that time in the late 80s, early 90s, called Bert Berdis Company. And if any of you were students of comedy radio, classic comedy radio, Bert was very well known because he was partnered up at one time with Dick Orkin, and they had some very well-known campaigns like Chicken Man and all these different campaigns, and they were very popular. And so I was at Bert Berdis Company in charge of their casting division and ended up producing and directing as well. And I was there for 6 years. And during that time, it was the height, the golden time of comedy radio. And, you know, our lobby was full of comedy actors. You know, Don Knotts, Tim Conway was there all the time. You know, just all these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful comedians. And we did some great work, won tons of awards. And it was really where I also cut my teeth with commercial radio, learning how to direct talent, how to cast talent, but also learn the ins and outs of timing and the skills that go into character acting and developing characters for comedy radio. And so that was a wonderful, wonderful time. And then radio started dying slightly, and then the .com started popping in, and the pop culture started taking over. So comedy radio was not dying a full death, but it was going in that direction, and it was becoming a lot hipper. And so I ended up changing companies and going to a company called World Wide Wadio, that was WADIO, and I was VP of production there, and I stayed there for 17 years. And during that time, not only did we do comedy radio and regular just traditional radio spots and radio advertising, but we also did a lot of narration, and we also developed quite a promo business. And so that's where I really cut my teeth with promos. And so during that time, we were hired because we were very well known in that area because the owner of the company had been working at a CBS affiliate many years ago and had developed quite a reputation in promo. And so we ended up working a tremendous amount with Food Network and Comedy Central and TBS doing their comedy blocks, and FX, and CBS was a long-term client for us, and then Fox Sports, and then various others, Hallmark and NatGeo, and you name it, we probably worked with them at some point, developing campaigns for them and recording them. And then we also did syndication. You know, a lot of times, many years ago when those wonderful TV comedies were developed, like, for example, Everybody Loves Raymond, or Becker, or, I'm trying to think, Sex and the City, all those. When we do those, when they go into syndication, oftentimes the studio, specifically Paramount, had these. They would use it as incentive, a radio spot that was produced specifically for each episode. And so they would come to a company like ours, and we would write and record radio spots specific for each show. And then they would sell that as a package to stations across the country. And so that was very lucrative for us. So anyway, so that was my time at World Wide Wadio. And then about 8 years ago, World Wide Wadio closed, and I went out on my own. And so the good news about being out on my own is that I can pretty much do whatever production is presented to me. And I love directing, and I'll produce and direct anything that's presented in front of me. And at that time, all of a sudden, dubbing started becoming a big deal. And so I worked out a deal with various companies, Netflix being the main one. And so since then, I've directed about 10 features and about 15 or 20 series for Netflix and HBO Max. And that's a whole different industry in itself, and that's still growing, and that's an exciting part of the industry. But in addition to that, I also have directed audiobooks. I had a deal with Leonard Nimoy, from Star Trek, and John Delancey, who also was in Star Trek, and we did all these sci-fi audio novels. And so, as I said, any day I pick up my phone, there's some new opportunity to direct, cast and direct something, and I just really, really love the voiceover industry and have so much respect for it and the actors that are involved in it. And I do think it's very worthwhile. Now, it is competitive, but it's definitely worthwhile and extremely creative. And, I'm sure a question that will probably come up today is about AI and how AI is affecting VO. And it is. I mean, AI is probably affecting a lot of things in our world, but there's still so many opportunities out there in terms of doing VO. And so that's pretty much my background in a nutshell. I don't want to bore you with any more minutia, but it just suffice it to say, I've been around for a long time. And again, I have been so fortunate to work with so many wonderful people, celebrities, non-celebrities, comedians, personalities, professionals in the industry. And, you know, it is again, it's such a worthwhile venture that, you know, as the folks at Online Acting Studio can tell you, I'm so passionate about, and again, because I've been involved with it for the majority of my career, and I hope to have a longer career in it. So anyway, so that sums up pretty much my credits and all that and my background. So, you know, I'd like to speak about what's going on in voiceover right now, because I think that's something that you guys should know about, the future of voiceover, where we are, where we're going, as far as we can tell. And then also, based on a lot of the questions, I'm sure I'll probably hit on a lot of these topics in my lecture today that are, you know, were also posed in the questions that I received. So hopefully I'll be not ticking those off as I'm speaking. So anyway, so first of all, in terms of what's going on, where we are with voiceover right now, again, we are talking about a competitive industry. I mean, for all of you, I sense that maybe some of you, from what I could tell just from the questions, some of you are already actors, whether you're in this country or other countries, and perhaps now you're just looking for other opportunities, which is certainly understandable and definitely important. But it is competitive. And so I say competitive in that you're fighting opportunities, trying to book opportunities within your own realm of what you're familiar with right now, and then moving forward and trying to investigate new areas. And so it is really, really tough. And there are tons of people already in this field as well. But the good news is the taste of the public continues to change and evolve. So you never know, when a voice is out of vogue one year, it may be in vogue the next year. So it's certainly not to say that no one should get involved in this and just think, oh, the industry's so full, who needs me? You just never ever know what opportunities are going to be presented to you. And so it's really important to just train, do your investigative work like you're doing now by watching this webinar, and to, if you really are serious in taking it further, then just to understand that it is a very competitive area. But if you go through the steps that I'm going to outline today, you stand a better chance of getting opportunities to book voiceover. And because, as I said, and I'll continue to say, it is a wonderful part of our business. In terms of what is actually happening today, I'd say in the United States, it does tend to be more real now. We're not hearing as much character radio. There were a couple of questions that were posed to me about characters and character voices and all that. We're not hearing those in advertising these days as much. Once in a while, you'll hear a character read or something like that. But for the most part, you're hearing more real reads, more organic, more connected. You'll hear those terms quite a bit when you're receiving direction. And basically, it's the advertisers just wanting a very natural sort of sound from all of you, something where it sounds like if you're reading a spot, let's say for Burger King, you actually sound like you like Burger King. And that is a very difficult thing to do when these aren't your words. So that's something that when you're in training and private coaching, something that I will be training you guys in, if you do choose to study at the studio, with the studio, then I will be helping you guys wrangle these advertising campaigns that may be written in a very kind of clunky advertising way to make them sound like they're your own. But, it's not to say that characters they don't exist. In animation, certainly, you hear characters all the time. With games, you also hear them all the time. But I would say the bulk of the work comes from advertising and narration and online. And so they're using more natural sounds. So I'd say in terms of just getting a start in voiceover, you need to find your own lane, know your voice, and be comfortable in your own voice, and develop that first before you move on and try to think that, oh, I can sound like a little girl, or I can sound like an animal. Those are great skills to have, don't get me wrong. But again, it's developing your natural voice first, being comfortable living in your natural voice, acting in a very natural way. And as I said, that's some of the most difficult acting to do. So that's key. So that is one direction that the industry is going. The good news is this: with technology, even though AI is a bad word right now, but with technology, new doors are opening every day. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, no one had heard of dubbing, for example, in terms of dubbing in our country the way it's being done right now. And now there's a flurry of activity going on in various cities throughout the country with these dubbing studios. And so that's an area of our business that's developed more and more and more. A lot of that is based on technology, and also because these streaming services need content, and there's all this fantastic content all around the world. And our country, the Americans, just don't want to read subtitles because we're usually multitasking while we're watching something anyway, or we're watching something on a very small device and don't want to have to put on our glasses to read subtitles. So anyway, dubbing has become very important. So that's just one example of how technology is affecting our business in a positive way and creating more opportunities for you guys. Now, regarding AI, I think who knows right now what's going to happen with AI. I can't say that it's definitely not going to affect voiceover. I think we're going to see it probably start etching away a bit here and there at certain types of voiceover. One thing that we were taught, I was in a meeting recently with some professionals in our business, and we were talking about audio description maybe being affected. And audio description, I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's it's similar to closed captioning in that it describes what's going on in the scene in between lines. So if you're seeing impaired, if you're eye impaired, then what happens is it's describing to you in an audio way that someone is picking up a vase and going across the room, and that's done. And there are companies that actually create that material, and we're thinking that AI may take a big bite out of that because it's not a nuanced read. You don't really need a real acting performance for that sort of thing. It's just more of a timing thing. So you'll find that more technical VO jobs that don't require acting nuances are probably going to be affected first with AI, just because it can be done. But in terms of performances, emotional performances, where you need to have a certain emotional context and bring that forward in a scene, that is not going to be affected right now in the near future. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea what's going on, and maybe there's technology being developed that's way beyond what anyone could conceive of happening with AI, and maybe we'll all be looking for new jobs down the road. But I don't foresee that happening in the very near future. But it's anyone's guess. But I wouldn't let AI scare anyone away from pursuing a voiceover career. So anyway, now in terms of that's sort of that's a very quick assessment of where we are right now, and in terms of the style of reads, hitting on various styles of voiceover, how voiceover you can bring a performance to a certain type of product or type of style of voiceover, and AI. But now I'm going to talk about acting, because that is very, very important. And I have in meeting with the great guys over at the online acting studios, we have been talking about voiceover, and I've been sort of educating them based on what I know about the business. And I think the misnomer about voiceover is that you have to have a very specific sound of voice, a very unique voice, or a very, what they would call a beautiful voice, or very, a character voice to really have a life in voiceover. And that really isn't the case. In certain areas, maybe. For example, trailers. The trailer business has compressed quite a bit over the years, but when you hear a trailer, it does tend to be a more resonant, deeper voice, that sort of thing. But for the most part, when you hear a performance in a TV spot, or even animation and gaming and all the other styles or genres and ways that voiceover can be used, it's not necessarily what your voice sounds like. It's the ability to act through your voice. And that's why studying is key, because voice acting is different from on-camera acting. And I know that there were a couple of questions that people posed to me about that, saying what's the difference between theatrical, online, visual acting as opposed to voice acting. And, I'd say the obvious is that, in voice acting, for the most part, we can't see you unless it's dubbing, and that's a little bit of a different animal. But the thing is, With everything else in voiceover, it's really purely your voice. And again, when I hesitate not to say what you can do with your voice, because sometimes people take that as being that you have to have this maximum flexibility and to be able to do wild things with your voice and do, creatures and have highs and lows and all that. It's not that. It's being able to act with purity and to think about what is the tone of the spot, for example, and I'll speak in context of commercial, but for example, it's doing analysis, understanding what is being written or what was written and what's the intent, what's the sales message, what's the tone, how are they selling it, how do they want you to sound, read the direction. If the direction is cryptic, which it can be, it's a matter of making just really good, solid judgments about what you think you can bring to the spot and being able to perform that in a very natural way and to be able to perform that over and over and over again. So voice acting is key, and we have many tools inside of us in terms of being able to manipulate our voices and bring our voices to life and really add purity to a performance. I mean, we can control pace, we can control tone, we can control volume, and we can control attitude through acting. And so there are all sorts of ways to control our voices and the way we perform to bring life and meaning and interpretation to a performance. And again, through study, self-aware practice, listening to yourself. Your ear is very important, by the way, in voiceover, if not more important than your voice, is to be able to hear yourself and others, and train and practice and listen back and listen back and listen back and train and practice and read scripts over and over again and manipulate your voice. Try to figure out what you sound like when you're sad. What do you sound like when you're angry? What do you sound like when you're happy? What do you sound like when you're sarcastic? What do you sound like when you're whimsical? What do you sound like when you're in a bad mood and cranky and tired? What do you sound like when you're extremely happy and just can't wait to talk to someone? What do you sound like when you're in love? So it's all of these things, even creating a chart for yourself and having that self-awareness of what your voice sounds like, how you're coming across. And again, this is all, it all comes through, it all happens by study, listening to yourself, playing back, again, training, and then and only then will you be prepared to take on a voiceover sort of career. So schooling, training is key, and that is the way to learn how to act. And voice acting is very specific, and I will say, and I'm not kidding, how many times I've had on-camera actors have come in and I've trained them, and they say to me later, after a series of classes, they say, I have to tell you something, my on-camera acting has improved based on the training that we have gone through together, because they don't realize how much they use their voice in their on-camera acting, and that they feel that their acting has gotten so much stronger because they have now more of an awareness of what they're doing with their voices. So I would say that it's a nice partnership with on-camera and voiceover, but they are different. And, as I was saying, voiceover, you don't have visuals to impart information. You don't have makeup. You don't have wigs. You don't have costumes. You don't have sets. You have you, and you have the words on the page. And yes, there's music. Yes, there's sound effects. But for the most part, unless you're doing narration, which has a visual component mostly, and then with animation, of course, with games, yes, there are types of voiceover work that has a visual component. But in the commercial world, even if you're doing a TV spot, more often than not, you're the VO. You're not on camera. You're not speaking through and being someone unless it's a character like a cartoon or something on a TV spot. So you're just narrating the TV spot, or you're being the VO. I don't say announcer because that's kind of a bad word, even though I don't consider it a bad word. But in the ad industry, they consider an announcer a bad word. But the thing is this, it's again, acting, and it's a lot more complicated than people realize. It's not as easy as people think, and I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and they say, people have told me I have a great voice, and I'll ask them if they have any acting experience. They say no, and they decide after I've given them what I think is a very realistic picture of what they're getting into and the basic fight they have moving forward to try to get into the business, and they still decide to take a class or two, and then after they study for 1 or 2 classes, they just go, I didn't realize how difficult this was going to be. This is a lot more difficult than I thought. And so that's why I have so much respect for the voice talent out there that are training and the ones that are working in the industry, because it's a craft, it's a skill, it's an art form. So anyway, so training, 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 as I said before. Now, let's say, for example, going down the road after training, let's say you've come to me, you've maybe studied with some other people as well, and now between all of us, the consensus is you're ready for a demo reel. And I know people are always asking about demo reels, and again, this addresses some of the questions that I received as well. And I will tell you, demo reels are important, but they're not the magic key. The mistake that most people make when they decide they want to get into the voiceover business is they try to skip over the training and they try to go right to the demo reel because they think that that's going to be the magic key, and it's not. You need to be able to work at training first, and once you've gotten an evaluation by a known demo producer and or a coach, and they say you're absolutely ready, then that's the time you want to engage a professional coach. There are a lot of us out there. And I definitely recommend talking to a couple of them, see if the vibe works, see how much the rates are. We're all kind of in the same pocket, but some are a little cheaper, some are a little bit more expensive, but for the most part, we're all in the same range. But I'd say definitely do your shopping. Listen to the demos they produce to make sure you're happy with the type of work that they do. And then you start having a discussion about what kind of copy, what your voice sounds like. Usually when I help people with demos, I will book a session with them and I'll give them a variety of different copy based on the conversation I've had with them just to see where their voice sits. And then I read them on a bunch of copy just to see maybe where we're going to take the voice, to contemporize it, to make sure that when we do a demo reel for you that you're sounding like you have some shelf life. We don't want to do a demo of, let's say there's a guy with a deep voice and I do a demo and yeah, it sounds great, but it sounds like an old-timey announcer from 1940s. Well, that's not going to work. That's not going to help them. No agent's going to sign you if that's all you can do. So anyway, it's a partnership between the producer and the coach and the actor to create a great demo for you that has shelf life and one that we feel that could hopefully get you in the door at a talent agency. Now, there are no guarantees, but the thing is you stand a better chance of getting into a good, well-established talent agency that has a voiceover division if you have a very well-produced, well-designed, thoughtful voiceover demo. Okay, and they don't have to be that long. Usually they're a minute or a minute and a half. They don't have to have a lot of stuff on them. Usually they're about 6, 7, 8 spots on them at the most. But the mistake a lot of people make is they put too much on there, and all of a sudden, as a listener, when I've evaluated demos that people have sent me, sometimes I have trouble even thinking, what's your natural voice sound like? I can't even tell. So you want to make sure your voice is represented in a very natural way first and foremost, and because that's the style right now anyway. And then you can venture off and put different attitudes. We don't want 8 spots to sound exactly the same. But let's say, for example, you're a young guy and let's say you sound 18 to 25, then yeah, we put a beer spot on there. We put a soda spot on there. Maybe even a spot for a car or, the demographic that would be buying that voice, or maybe a sports gear product like Nike or something like that. So it's thinking about that, thinking about where your voice would be marketable. Okay, so that's the demo reel. And again, the biggest mistake is that people try doing their demos before they're ready. And believe me, the agents are savvy to that. So let's say they get a demo and they have never heard of the demo producer that you've used, or they may even have heard of that producer. And let's say they listen to it and they like it and they call you in. You better be able to recreate that demo reel in front of them, because if you get in there and you start, and the nerves kick in and you can't recreate it, you start stumbling all over the place because you're not prepared, then they're just going to think, yeah, the award goes to the demo producer, not to the actor. And so you want to keep that in mind. Be prepared. Be ready for the demo. Don't have the demo produced around your voice and make you sound like someone you're not. Okay? So that's that. Now, let's say, for example, you've got the demo and it's a fantastic demo. And let's say you start wanting to market around. How do you do that? Again, addressing some other questions. How do I get an agent? That is a very difficult thing because, as you can imagine, a lot of the agencies, the main agencies, most of them have full departments. They probably have more than they need in some of the categories. So that is a fight, and I'd be lying to you to say that it's an easy way to get in, just by having a great demo. It's not. Then you might ask me, then how do you get in? Well, it's not that you should give up. I'd say definitely get a list of the main agencies in the big cities. the national agencies are in LA and New York, so you want to hit those first. But we're now at an age with the internet that now there are opportunities at smaller agencies around the country as well. There's some wonderful ones in Seattle. There's some wonderful ones in San Francisco. There's some fantastic ones in Atlanta. There's some in St. Louis. There's some in South Carolina. There's some in Atlanta. There's some in Dallas. So they're all over the place, and a lot of them get the same copies. So even if you're at these agencies and not at the main agencies, you are still getting access to a lot of the copy that's going on around the country or in the United States. Now, for European, for Canadian, for Australian, I'm not quite sure how that copy is disseminated. I know there's some big agencies in Canada. There's certainly some big agencies in Europe. I know there's a few big ones in London that are great that I've worked with, and in Germany as well. So there are agencies littered throughout the world. It's just finding them wherever you're located. I'd say work locally first, and then venture forward after that outward to other markets around the world. Now, let's say, for example, you're hitting walls. You're not getting represented by anyone. You can also go online, and there are some pay-to-play sites out there too that you can upload your demo to them and fill out forms, and of course you have to pay, hence the name pay-to-play, but that gives you access to copy that's out there, and that also gives you good practice because you don't want to get discouraged because sometimes it takes a while to get an agent. Just because you have a great demo, just because you've marketed yourself out there doesn't mean all of a sudden it's going to naturally kick in. You're going to definitely want to stay active in voiceover, train and practice. The practice never stops. So if you join a pay-to-play site, yes, it's non-union. Yes, sometimes it's nickels and dimes, but it's also, you're almost being forced to practice every day by doing pay-to-play. So that is something to keep in mind as well. I don't want people to walk away from this webinar today thinking that I'm advocating that everyone should do pay-to-play. It really is something that you should think about and consider, but it may not be right for you. But just think about that. So you can still be active in the VO business without even having representation, just to buy time until you get representation. There are also a tremendous number of, I'd say tremendous, not a tremendous, but a lot of management companies out there too that are acting like talent agencies. They can be a bit trickier because sometimes some of them may ask you for money. They shouldn't, in my opinion, but they do. But if the relationship works, it works no matter what. So you may find it worthwhile to pay them a stipend and get access to some flashier copy and maybe a wider variety of copy as opposed to something on the pay-to-play. So my whole point of this is that, yes, your goal is, again, starting back to training, then demo reel, then talent agent and or manager. That's sort of the trajectory, I can't talk, of how you should try to, if you do want to venture into a voiceover career, to get a career going by going that way. But on the side, you can try to get work, again, through pay-to-plays and perhaps even through friends. If you have a good demo reel, I'd say that's always a good calling card because you never know. I can't tell you how many times people have told me they've been at a cocktail party and someone has said, "Hey, what are you doing now?" And then let's say you'd say, I'm actually trying to get into voiceover. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, well, my husband works at this production company and they're looking for new promo voices. Do you have a promo? Do you have a demo reel?" And you can say, "Yeah, it's not promo, but it's commercial, but I can do promo." And you give it to them. You send it to them. You email it to them. So you just never, ever, ever know. There are opportunities around the corner every day. And so, definitely don't get discouraged by not being able to find representation because you can still try to get work in other ways. But it should be your goal to try to get representation. And this is a good segue to talk about union versus non-union. It used to be if you and I were having this conversation about 5-10 years ago, I'd say you need to get a SAG card to be competitive in our business. That's not necessarily the case now. And I'm pro-union, trust me. But I also work a lot in the non-union world as well. And non-union people are in many ways equivalent to SAG actors. They just haven't gotten on board with the union yet. Some of them are trying to get a SAG card, but that's sometimes hard to do. So in the meantime, they're doing non-union work. But there's a tremendous amount of non-union work out there at the chagrin of the union members, by the way. But the bottom line is there is a lot of work in both ways, union and non-union. And most of the known talent agents out there now have non-union divisions. So it's not as much of an issue as it used to be. Okay, so that's a good segue, from that. So now, where do we go from here? The thing is this: I think that first of all, number one, have an interest, be fascinated with voiceover. There's some people that think that they want to be in voiceover, but they don't really hunger for it. They think, oh, you know what? I love the idea of being in my sweats and being able to get up out of bed, going to my computer, printing out a few scripts, pouring my coffee, going into my booth, reading those, and then I have the rest of my day to play. Well, yes, that sounds wonderful, and yes, some people can get away with that sort of lifestyle doing that, but that sounds to me a little bit like a hobbyist and not a professional. And I think that especially when you're just learning about voiceover and starting your journey, you need to treat it as a profession. And that is by disciplining yourself to every day do something moving towards training, towards your demo, towards getting an agent, and towards looking for other voiceover opportunities out there. Because if you're not doing that, there are other people that are doing that are going to leap over you. There are people that sound like you. They're your age. They're your demographics. So there's a tremendous amount of competition. So if you really do want voiceover, I suggest, and I tell this to every single person, that before you take this on, ask yourself the key question: is this work that I'm willing to do? Am I willing to take that effort? Am I willing to spend that time of my life, devote this to the journey of voiceover? And if you are, then I think it's a fantastic journey, and I think it's something worth going for. And I think that, again, having listened to a lot of the things that I've talked about and outlined, that will, if you listen to that and take that into consideration in terms of your plans, in terms of getting into voiceover, I think you will have success. Okay. One last thing, and then I am going to open it up to questions, because as the folks know over at Online Acting Studios, I can talk for hours and hours and hours about voiceover because I just love it so much. So I don't want to diverge too much from the Q&A section, because I know you guys probably have quite a few questions that maybe I didn't answer. The one last thing I will talk about is accessibility, because I know people are wondering about that. And this kind of goes in line with equipment. And I saw a number of questions regarding equipment as well. I'm of the sort of thought that you don't have to spend a lot of money on equipment. Yes, you want to spend some money on equipment, meaning good microphones, a little bit of soundproofing in a booth or a closet. You want to make sure you understand your software. There are a lot of editing softwares out there that are inexpensive. I use Twisted Wave, and trust me, if I can use it, anyone can, and it's not expensive. But you just want to make sure that when you are taking that leap into voiceover, that you have the basic tools, because everyone has them now that's in voiceover. And so you're competing with people who have the basics onto the ultra professional level studios at home. I'm not saying that anyone should go and get a Studio Bricks, which are wonderful, by the way. They're fantastic. Or those recording booths that you can buy, the whisper rooms and that sort of thing. I'm not advocating that anyone should do that now, unless you really, really want to and have the income and you foresee that you are going to be having a career in voiceover, then absolutely go for it. But for people starting out, all I suggest is finding an isolated area in a room of their house, hopefully an internal room, maybe a small closet. It could be a walk-in closet with a lot of clothes hanging that can absorb a lot of the reverberant sound. And just to make sure you have the basics in terms of just generally a good microphone. It doesn't have to be a Sennheiser. It doesn't have to be a U87. It could be a Rhodes or a Shure. I'd say just go online. There are tons of voiceover web sites that will promote certain microphones, and you can ask. You can go to music, like the Music Center, Guitar Center, music stores, and maybe they'll even let you test out a microphone. It's just the equipment doesn't do the acting for you, but it does have to be of a certain standard so that you get access to this level of work. But I do think that I try to be very protective over talent, and I don't want you guys to leave this today and think, oh, Jeff Howell said that I have to go and spend thousands of dollars to even jump off and start a voiceover career. I mean, to start off, to practice on your own, you could use just a very simple microphone. You could even use your internal microphone on your computer. It's a little bit tougher because I think you all should get used to using external microphones. But again, you could probably find even a used external microphone that's good enough when you're first starting out, just to even see if you want to do it and want to continue in your voiceover career. I say let the need dictate how much money you start spending in voiceover in terms of getting up to speed in terms of having a professional sound. But I also suggest for all of you, again, when I mentioned the editing software, is that one pitfall that I have found that sometimes actors will, they all chit chat with each other, and it's like, I'm doing this type of software and I'm using this software, and this one is more pro based and this, that, but it makes me sound better. But the thing is, I think that the simpler the better. And what you want to do is you want to practice with it before you need it, because the minute you need it and you don't know how to use it, let's say, for example, I send you an audition and I ask you to convert it from a MP3 to a WAV file, and you look at me with eyes like deer in the headlights and don't even know what that means. That's a problem, because this is a time, sometimes it's a time sensitive audition and I need it right away. And so you need to be able to master your software very quickly, so that in the event you are doing an audition from home and it needs to be done quickly, you need to know how to do it. And granted, there's a lot of help out there in setups. There's a lot of people out there that just love the technical stuff. I am not the person to talk to about that, because I'm spoiled, because I have wonderful engineers that I work with in our industry, and they take care of all that for me. So, but I know enough to be able to suggest certain things to you guys, which I've already mentioned, and to also suggest, just from a understanding talent and hearing the pitfalls of home directing and home recording and what they face, that I think that it's just really just spending as little as you can starting out, but also making sure you have a somewhat professional sound so that you can compete right away. And then as the need progresses, then you can start adding a few more dollars to your investment in your career and building a nice little setup at home. Okay, so I think I am going to now release my speaking, lecturing, and address questions. I think I may have hit upon a big group of questions that I received. So I'm opening up the floor to you guys. If you have any questions regarding voice acting, getting into voiceover in terms of how to maneuver through agents and managers, equipment, that's fine. I'll do my best. Whatever you guys want to ask, I'll be glad to address any of your questions, and then we'll wrap up in a few minutes, and I'll give you information regarding my classes. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully I'm seeing the right thing. Adam, let me know if they're hands up, because I'm not seeing any yet. So I mean, I've got other things. Okay, great, perfect. Okay, let's see. Okay, I see one hand. Nasia. Let's see. Okay. So Nasia asked, my agency recommended this to me, so I just joined without thinking. Didn't realize this was a beginner's webinar. I've been doing this for 8 years. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the industry. Okay, great. Well, I'm so glad that you've been in the industry. It's, again, someone who's enjoyed it. That's fantastic. Let's see. Is there anyone else? Oh, do you suggest building a website to house your demos, or is Actors Access and Spotlight okay? Well, I'll tell you what. If you had asked me this question about 10 years ago, I would have said, ugh, websites, who needs them? I got to tell you, I go on websites of actors' websites all the time now, and I'm not the only one in casting and producing and directing. But again, like I said, you don't have to spend a lot of money in website development either. There are all these. I use Squarespace. I had a friend of mine help me because I'm technically an idiot sometimes, and I wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing. I have a very simple, basic website that I do need to update, by the way, I will admit that to you guys. But I do think that as an actor, it is your responsibility to have, that's part of your calling card. It's a place where you can put your demos, but it's also a wonderful place to share more information about yourself and to let us know your skills. You can put down accents if you do accents, different character voices, maybe even list things that you're involved in. Whether I love it when I see actors have theatrical skills, or they're in stage, or they're comedy, if they do comedy. So that's something to keep in mind as well. It's a great way to promote yourself. So I do urge you all to, if you don't have a website already, I think it does help. So and now another question, does your agency offer voiceover reels? I'm no longer an agent. I'm freelance. And I don't, well, you know what? You can send a reel to me if you would like, and I can put it in my library. In terms of my dubbing, I usually go through the dubbing houses, and they have a library of reels as well. But a lot of times in voiceover, we listen to demos to get a sense of your voice, but we also send out auditions. So a lot of times we get our castings, we cast through auditions. So that's why I urge you all to try to get representation or go on the pay-to-play sites just to get out there so that you get access to these opportunities as opposed to just sending reels out, okay? And how do I let my personality come through in voiceovers? That's an interesting question. That's actually really nice. Let's talk about acting for a second. You can read the direction on the page, you can look at the copy, and you can read it. And it can be a good read, but it doesn't have the soul. It doesn't have the spirit. So what you want to do is you want to, as an actor, infuse your reads with some joy, natural passion. A lot of times, these spots are written where we need pride. And so I'm always asking actors, where's the pride? And so it's thinking about that and bringing that forward in your read and your audition, and we'll hear your natural sound through that. I don't want you guys to think you have to be a gimmick, do gimmicks and try to create jokes and be wacky and try to set yourselves aside from other people. There are people that try to figure out ways to sound different than other people, but the thing is, if you give a really good solid read that sounds so natural and you're bringing your own soul to it, we're going to hear it, and it's not going to sound so cookie cutter, okay? What exactly is pay-to-play site and how do they work? Okay, so as I mentioned before, pay-to-play, there are these websites out there that, and I don't know the names of them, and there's one that I do know, but I don't really, well, it's not that I don't recommend them, but it's just I don't know the ins and outs to be able to endorse them enough or not. You just have to be very careful when you sign up for these. But basically, there are these websites that market themselves to ad agencies and other casting companies to get copy in, and what they do is they make money off of you guys because you buy a certain level of membership. And the way they do it is let's say the first class membership is more expensive per year. Maybe you could do it per month or per year. I don't know. I just suggest you do your research on Google and find out. But those people would get the scripts first. So let's say I'm an ad agency. I have a script. I send it to, let's say, voicecasting.com or something like that, and they send it out, but they would send it to that first group who paid a little bit more to get first access to it so they could audition on it and get it in a little bit ahead of everyone else, okay? Then, let's say the B group pays a certain amount of money and they get it in the second tier, and then the third group has maybe a standard membership and they get it at the end. Now, everyone gets it in deadline. That's really up to you, but it's like the premium service. They get a little bit of a jump on it. And whether or not that makes a difference, who knows? Human nature being what it is, maybe that first group gets listened to first. I can't speak for everyone out there evaluating voice casting auditions, but let's just say that's an example. But that's pay to play. You're paying a fee to receive scripts and to be able to audition. So you're paying for access. When you're with a talent agency, you don't pay for access. When you book, the agents make 10% of what you're making, and that's how they get paid. Okay? So that was that question. Hopefully that addressed that. So those are all good questions so far. I'm not seeing any other ones right now. But there's also a list of questions here that I can also address. Oh, I didn't see. Oh, okay, sorry, that skipped. Oh, I see. So, okay, on my bucket list is dubbing a Netflix series. Where do we go for this? Okay, so here's the deal. No matter where you live, if you have a good sounding room where you can record, you can get access to dubbing. But what you need to do is you need to reach out to the dubbing houses in New York and Los Angeles. Most of them have internal casting departments. So what you would do is you would send a voice sample. And a lot of times actors will ask me, do I need to do a specific demo for dubbing? And I say, no, you don't. But what you can do is you can create a voice sample of various attitudes, because in dubbing we're listening more for your natural voice, unless it's anime and animation, which is a different animal. But let's say, for example, I'm casting a feature film. I need someone who sounds natural, but when I'm casting, I need to believe that your voice is coming out of that mouth. But in order for me to judge that, I need to hear how you shift and pivot with attitudes. So let's say, for example, you don't have an agent, but you want to be on the list at one of these dubbing houses. Then what you'd want to do is just create a very simple reel of basically maybe 5 or 10 lines of you talking, but you can maybe choose a scene from a script. You can, I'm sure online you can find samples of scenes and things, and just read and give us a sample of what you sound like when you're angry. Give us a sample when you sound happy. Give us a sample of what you sound like you're being conversational. You know, that kind of thing. And that gives us a better idea of what your voice naturally sounds like, as opposed to, I know some actors, they don't have that reel, but what they'll do is they'll send in a produced animation reel, but that sometimes doesn't help me because they're doing so many crazy, wacky voices. I can't tell what their natural voice sounds like. So I wouldn't be able to cast them purely off an animation reel. So basically, once you send in a voice element or a sample to your production, to a dubbing house, and you'd probably fill out a questionnaire about if you do accents, if you do different, if you understand, if you're bilingual, trilingual, and your age range and all that, where you're located, what kind of equipment you have, then you get on the list. And then after that, it's anyone's guess how quickly that can happen. I will tell you, it is a hint of a harder sell right now because of the technology to book people from outside of Los Angeles and New York because of the lag time with the technology. But during COVID, I worked with people from all over the world, and we just had to deal with the lag time. For incidental roles, we're more willing to, but for lead roles, because time is money, we're probably more apt to read people who can actually be in studio and appear in person. So anyway, but it is a wonderful part of the business, and I'd say if that is certainly an interest of you and on your bucket list, it's not impossible. Maybe it's a matter of I don't know where you live, Jill. Oh, you're in Park City. Okay. So what I would do is, I don't know what your living situation is, but you might want to try spending a little bit of time in Los Angeles as well, and maybe go in and try to meet some of the producers and directors of dubbing, and just make it seem so seamless that, for example, since it is your bucket list, if they do book you as a lead, you could just come here for a week and record. So you could be in person too, and just take that concern off the list. Okay. Let's see. So, do you support Bill? Okay, I did that one. Does your agency? How do I let a person come through? Okay, I did that. Okay, Adam, did I? I think I've. Okay, good. Okay, great. Okay, so we have a few more minutes left. I think that maybe this will be a good opportunity, Adam, unless you feel like I should address any other burning questions, to talk about the training that I'll be doing. Okay, great. So anyway, so I'm excited to announce that I am going to be working with the Online Acting Studio to create a voiceover program. And we've got 3 classes coming up within the next month and a half. And I'll be covering very specific acting techniques for different styles of voiceover, primarily commercial, because that's what you're going to want to focus on first, because that's where you'll get the most opportunities when you're first starting out. And, you know, I've taught this class many times. I have a lot of great tricks that I can show you. And also, because it's not as big of a class, you'll get a lot more focused attention from me, and I'll be able to hear your reads and give you directorial tricks that you can do on your own when I'm not around. And I'll give you exercises as well to help improve your acting skills and your ear to be more sensitive to the advertising messages that you're having to read. And I'm always excited meeting new students and providing new contemporary scripts for you guys to go over, because I think it just really helps you guys wrap your head around what you're getting into, and it prepares you for the next steps in your journey. And you know, I've been so pleasantly surprised. I'm always blown away by the natural talent that a lot of people have. Some people have more than others. But I think that, you know, again, it's taking your natural gifts of listening and acting and just conforming them to a voiceover sort of style, and really trying to turn this into a viable sort of profession that may be a good in acting in conjunction with either a stage acting career, theatrical career, or maybe you have no interest in being on camera or theatrical and you really want to just focus on voiceover, which is a wonderful thing to do as well, because like I said before, it is a profession that requires attention. It's not just something that you want to dabble in. And an example of that, actually, I think it's worthy of bringing up, is that about, I'd say, maybe 10 years ago, I was working at a children's acting school. We had some adults as well. And I was doing the voiceover division. And there was a girl who was just dynamite. She had just a sparkling personality, and she had done some on camera. She wanted to do animation, and I loved her voice. I loved her energy. She was so eager to learn. She just walked in with a smile, and I asked many questions, and we got to know each other quite well. And she had done some live. She loved Disney, and she had been in the parade, appeared in the Disney parade many times as a princess. Anyway, so when I started in this school, I said I also wanted to do a promo section, which is promos is a whole separate, it's the ads for TV shows and streaming. It's that coming up on CBS, that sort of read, which I produced a million of them over the years. And so I was teaching promo, and she just had a real natural ability that leaned towards that. So I pulled her aside and I said, listen, I really think you should be developed more in that area, because I think that I love your sound, and I predict that you're going to go far if you really devote time to that. So she came to me, we did some private coaching, I helped her put a reel together for commercial and promo, and she submitted it to a big talent agency in Los Angeles, and they signed her right away, and it was just an amazing a partnership. And she started booking games first, believe it or not. But she came to me a couple of times because I said to her, don't give up on promo. I have a feeling you're going to be big. Well, about 3.5, 4 years ago, she became the voice of E. And she's been the voice of E for now a number of years. And she also does a lot of the award shows too, those live reads. Her name is Noveen Crumby, and she's a sweetheart. She's just amazingly talented. But she's one of my success stories, and that's because she really dedicated herself to really studying voiceover and took it very seriously and really was hungry for it. And she knew what she was facing with the competition, and she didn't let that dissuade her. She really wanted to just keep moving forward. Now, cut to now, because she's been such a success story and she's been interviewed many times, and I've actually appeared on one of her interviews as her coach, her teacher, and her mentor. And she's lovely, and she's so generous to me too. And she always credits me as her mentor and her coach. And so because of that, and she posts on Instagram and Twitter that I get a lot of hits online from people who have heard her speak, and they're interested in getting into voiceover as well. And so, but these are people that have never acted ever before, and so they have no clue whatsoever of what it takes to be a voiceover. And because her success story, she's so vibrant and energetic and lovely that she makes it sound easy. And that's not because that's no fault of hers. She just made it easy because for her, when she speaks, it's so effortless because she studied and she did all that background work. And she does tell everyone in her interviews, by the way, that she worked very hard for it. It's not like she just said it just happened. But my whole point of this story is that I get a tremendous number of people coming to me, and I do my very best to screen them by telling them that this is not an easy profession to get into, and it's not an easy profession to sustain work in, but it is worth doing. But you have to ask yourself whether you're really ready to sign on for this journey and do the work that it takes. And in her case, she did the work. She continues to study. I still work with her periodically, although she's so busy, she doesn't have time for me anymore. But the thing is, she is serious. She's a professional. And so whenever anyone comes to me, whether they've had acting experience or not, I always say to them, this is not easy, but it's definitely an amazing, amazing, amazing profession. And that it's if you have a hunger for it, then it's definitely worth going down that road. So I think, Adam, we're about ready to wrap. Oh, and if you guys, and definitely you can sign up for my classes through the Online Acting Studio at onlineactingstudio.com. And they will take care of you, and I hope to be able to work with each and every one of you at some point. My pleasure. Good luck, guys. Good luck in your journey. Bye.
Bye.